Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 16th edition of the Williamson County School Board. I'd like to thank Deputy Matt Erickson for being with us this evening. Thank you, Deputy, for being here. And I'd like to also recognize the Fairview Woodwinds with the Director, Mark Kinzer, who entertained us right before the meeting. Thank you very much for that. Board members, if you would go ahead and record your attendance now. Shown are all here. Is it all recording, Brian? Okay, we have 12 members present. The next item is the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence. If we could ask Deputy Matt Erickson to come forward and lead us in the pledge, and then if you'd please remain standing for a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could have a moment of privilege before you proceed.
Yes, sir.
I have been directed not to do this, but it's Gary Anderson's 21st birthday, and I would be remiss if we didn't recognize him. Happy birthday, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mr. Anderson. Happy birthday to you.
Those are dog ears, by the way. This first. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I've spent, I think it's been 4 or 5 birthdays here. Based on the way the calendar works, I think this is my 4th or 5th one that I've been here on board meeting night, so thank you. All right. Hard transition to the next item, items of particular public interest. Obviously, that one wasn't one. We have 4 speakers lined up to speak this evening, so we'll do 3 minutes each. When I call your name, please come to the mic, state your name, your address, and what you're wanting to speak on, and then you'd have 3 minutes. And our timekeeper is over there, Miss Garrett, and she'll let you know when the time is up. So our first speaker is Brandy McCutcheon. If you'd come forward, please.
Hello, my name is Brandy McCutcheon, and I live at 503 Braylon Circle in Franklin. I'm a resident of Franklin and a member of the Coalition of Concerned Parents. In an open record request to Williamson County Schools, emails were released. One of the Williamson County School social workers to Dr. Looney. In this email, she states that that she was an advocate for social change and social justice and was very pleased with Dr. Looney's efforts with cultural competencies and awareness. And she was looking forward to more of that happening with teachers and students. I am here tonight to say that we are not, and we are adamantly opposed to these trainings in our schools and this white privilege train of thought. Concerned parents would like some insight on how these videos came about, why Sarah Malamed is reporting to Dr. Looney on this in-house cultural training that she admits used Peggy McIntosh writing on white privilege, along with social justice expert and training developer Horatio Sanchez and his company Resiliency Inc. for content. These trainings are the last thing from organic, although the videos worked hard to show some teachers buying into the notion of white privilege. The email release from Ms. Malamed stated that that was the plan, to keep the videos from appearing canned or staged. I am here tonight to say that we are not asleep and we do not approve of or agree with the content or the way these trainings were developed. I watched the modules and was very distressed by what I saw. The fact that those trainings were approved and implemented is egregious. The ideology set forth in those modules, especially Module 3, the one on white privilege, was disturbing at best. We want to make sure that that training is entirely out of our school system with no plans for implementation into curriculum via social work, social workers, programs, or anything that concerns our students. The bigger question is, how did it happen? And will there be any oversight or recourse from the school board on how to avoid this in the future? Our parents need assurance that our kids are being taught, not indoctrinated at school. Can you please make sure that happens? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Adina Kishanthi.
Hello. Adina Kishanti. State my address, right?
Yes, ma'am.
445 Savannah Way, Franklin, District 4. Dr. Looney, I'm here to talk to you and also to the parents who came to the meeting about the no social studies curriculum that has been developed over the past year, I guess. I received your email today. Thank you. So just to recap, I went in just for a 1-hour spot check to see some items in the new curriculum, and just within that hour, I spotted 2 articles that were in the curriculum and really made my stomach churn. And I'm thinking that maybe the people who developed the curriculum might have agreed with me, since when I called their attention to it, they told me it would be removed. Now, I have asked you, Dr. Looney, to give us extended access to the curriculum, since just this 1-hour check turned up these 2 egregious articles that would have been presented to our children. And you have given us the offer to go in from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. during regular business hours to look at the curriculum in the presence of another staff member in the district office. And this is more of a rhetorical question, but why can't we just get a temporary username and password and log in? And it presents cumbersome conditions for people who work 9 to 5 to have to go into the district office and view the curriculum. And in that note, I want to put out a call to all parents who are here right now and who might be watching this on YouTube later on, to please come to our Facebook page, WCSTN Parents Want Facts, handle at WCS Parents, where you can see these 2 articles that I have pulled on my own after seeing them, and more about how you can help us review the curriculum. We're going to need more people, since very few of us are able to go in from 9 to 5. And lastly, I'm going to have to leave after this. I hope I won't be chided or scolded by any board members. I have a babysitter waiting back at home for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kalinda Fisher.
Hi, Kalinda Fisher, 3118 Anfield Way, Franklin. I stand here as a parent of a past student, as well as a current junior at Independence High School. I stand here as a sociologist who constantly questions and consistently thinks critically. I stand here as a member of the Cultural Competency Council. I stand here on behalf of all students, teachers, and administrators of Williamson County Schools who want to do what is right by and for all students. I stand here to defend the path being taken to increase cultural competency in our county because it's right. You can access the objectives of the council at your leisure, or I'm happy to share later, by the way. We are fortunate to live in a place of plenty, for some. We are fortunate to live in a place of welcome, for some. We are fortunate to live in a place of quality public education for all. It is largely because of this quality public education, so many of us in this very room have chosen Williamson County to be our home. I come by way of a very proud public education, and I'm very proud to send my children to one as well. Publication is important to me. Public education, sorry. Public education is worth fighting for. But we can't fight for public education if we don't fight for all equally. It's important not just for me or my children, it's important for all those children whose potential has yet to be tapped, who may one day cure cancer or lead our nation with knowledge and kindness. Maybe that child who today feels not so welcome in our schools because they've had a swastika drawn on their locker, or been the butt of an inappropriately led lesson on slavery. If they feel welcome, if we empower them, maybe they will be the one that shows us that there's room for everyone. We think things are pie, if you will. We think things are finite: money, power, influence. But if we take a step back, we realize that the more we empower others, the higher we too rise, because we're doing what is right, what is fair, and what is just. I commend Dr. Looney and Aaron and all those of the Cultural Competency Council who are trying to accomplish this. I invite others to join us, as I do before every meeting, by the way, because we have room and we need your voice. It's not about limiting voices. It's not about indoctrinating teachers or students. It's about helping all those currently in our district and all those who will come to feel welcome and to be empowered. It is set up to encourage critical thinking and, yes, to encourage compassion, for we don't know someone else's story unless we ask. Humans cannot reach the point of empathy without being able to know what it feels like to walk in someone else's shoes. The CCC is attempting to do just that. So in closing, our district may be full, but our hearts can always find room to welcome more. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Katie Allred.
Hello, my name is Katie Allred. My address is 2239 Dominic Drive in Nolensville. I'm here to speak about the issue to vote in rising fourth graders to grandfather into Mill Creek Elementary School. To those of you who support this already, I thank you. To those of you who are on the fence or who oppose this proposal, I ask for your reconsideration tonight. This particular group of children have already been rezoned from Nolensville Elementary School to Mill Creek Elementary School. Now they are being rezoned back to Nolensville Elementary School. And when phase 2 of the past proposal takes effect next year, they will be affected again, as a large portion of their new peer group will be rezoned to Sunset Elementary School. It has been presented that option 1 affects less families, but I would like to point out that while it may affect less families, it affects the same families multiple times. This group of rising fourth graders are the ones that will be affected the most. These changes are disruptive and should be avoided whenever possible. At the meeting at the Nolensville High School a couple of weeks ago, I spoke with several board members who voiced support of grandfathering the rising fourth grade class. It seems that some of those with whom I spoke have since withdrawn their support, citing overcapacity and overcrowding. I am asking you tonight to remember those conversations from the meeting where you voiced your support for grandfathering and mentioned that with Gary Anderson's experience and expertise over this geographical area, you would support his recommendation. Allowing this group of students to grandfather will eliminate the effects of 2 rezones on them in a 1-year time period. So tonight I would ask that you please vote yes to grandfathering in rising 4th and 5th graders to Mill Creek Elementary School. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of our speakers this evening. So we're, board members, we're ready to approve the agenda. Anyone like to make a motion for approval of the agenda? We have a motion from Mr. Welch, second from Mr. Ha. Any discussions, questions, changes? Okay, I see none. If you go ahead, Dr. Looney, would you like to make a recommendation on this?
For the consent agenda?
No, for the regular agenda.
Oh, yes, sir. For the regular agenda. Yes, sir. I do recommend approval of the regular agenda.
All right, go ahead and record your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The consent agenda items. Anyone like to make a motion for our consent agenda items? We have a motion for Ms. Garrett. I'd like to second it. We have a second for Mr. Cash. Any comments or questions on these? Okay, I see none. If you go ahead and record your votes, please.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
All right, thank you. When we approve the consent agenda, we approve the March 25th, 2019 school board meeting minutes. We approve the board policies on second reading, section 4 of the board policies. We deleted policy 4.2011 on federal programs. We approved 5.604 overtime pay policy. We approved the recommendations for field trip fee requests, and we approved approval of the Read to Be Ready 2019 summer grant for Fairview Elementary School. Next item is communications to the board, the superintendent's report. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. At this time, I'd like for Mrs. Birdsong to come forward. We'd like to recognize some outstanding students and staff members.
Yes, we would, Dr. Looney. And our first one tonight is Daniel Chin. Daniel, come on up with Dr. Reggie Mason. Everybody, this is Daniel. And Daniel, what year are you in school?
I'm a freshman.
Daniel's a freshman at Ravenwood, and he has earned a perfect score, composite score on his ACT. Can you get a picture for your mom, please? We'll take a photo. Did you get what you needed? Okay, very good. All right, congratulations, Daniel. Thank you very much. Not sure if Daniel's our first freshman, but that's rare. That's rare. All right, and we will now turn to Brentwood High School, and we are going to honor several students who participated in the State of Tennessee's DECA competition, and this is Matthew Koshi, and Matthew won first place in automotive services marketing. Also from Brentwood, first place in business law and ethics team decision making, James Derryberry and Charlie Harden. Also from Brentwood High School, first place in business financial consultant is Patrick Holcomb. From Brentwood, first place in integrated business marketing plan product category, Holly Powers and Emily Dapril. And from Brentwood High School, first place DECA competition, business marketing communications, Camilla Muhammad. And also from Brentwood High School, first place marketing management team decision making, Katie Contich and Chandler Gallagher. Their teacher is Lisa Neese. Also in DECA competition, first place from Page High School Hospitality Services team event, Taylor Kubricki and Mackenzie Kincaid. First place in franchise business plan, Mackenzie Elliott, Michaela Marlin and Josie Marlin. First place in food marketing, Noah Ross. First place in business services marketing, Lauren Smith. First place in quick serve restaurant management, Grace Wofford. Their teacher at Page is Jackie Stevens. Now we're going to Centennial High School for the Tennessee State Future Business Leaders of America competition. First place, Hospitality Management, Jerry Elms. Jerry's teacher is Robbie Reed. Also, from Centennial High School, first place in Entrepreneurship Team, Caitlin Harker and Carrie Massey. Again, Robbie Reed is their teacher. Now to Fairview Middle School, and it's not often we get to honor our middle school students, but these students participated in the Tennessee Student Association competition. First place in mass production, Kylan Keller, Connor Ferris, and Katie Staton. And also from Fairview Middle School, Katie Staton and Haley Hughes. First place in problem solving, Sarah Reynolds is their teacher. TSA competition at the high school level from Fairview High School. This is Isabel Chris, who has been named the state vice president. And this is Jax Turner, who's been named the state secretary for TSA. And this is Alexis Minion, who has been named a national office candidate. Their teacher sponsor is Kevin Sizemore. Also with TSA from Page High School, Katie Weaver. And Katie earned the Distinguished Student Award, and she is shown there with her teacher, Beth Foreman. Also, first place in the TSA from Page in the category of Engineering Design, Amal Pokel, Sammy Butker, Adita Dondagala, Jacob Phillips, Max Styler, and Elijah Tidwell. Also from Page High School, first in on-demand video, Katie Weaver, Natalie Harris, Katie Adams, Sammy Bugter, Chris Hill, India Lux, Delaney Miller, and Will Sowers. First place in prepared presentation, Nathan Davis. And first place in promotional design, Natalie Harris. Beth Foreman, again, is their teacher, and also from Page High School in video game design, Nathan Davis, Jacob Phillips, Max Styler, Annie Weaver, and Logan Zukas. Beth Foreman, their teacher, and here we go back to Ravenwood High School. The Tennessee Association of School Librarians held a bookmark contest, and the winner came from Ravenwood. And her name is Madeline Zhang. Tiffany Tucker is her teacher. We talked about Beth Foreman before, and here she is again from Page High School. She was named the TSA High School Advisor of the Year for the state of Tennessee. Also in staff spotlights, this is Liza Vaughn. You have seen her before. She has presented to you. She is one of our OER social studies experts. She has been selected to attend the Library of Congress Teacher Institute this summer. And last but not least this evening, this is Cody Hawks, 5th grade teacher at Hillsboro, who received the Middle Tennessee Financial Literacy Leadership Award. Congratulations to all of our teachers and staff.
Mr. Chairman, the last item of my report is I just wanted to announce the next Cultural Competency Council meeting is May the 14th at 6 p.m. in the Professional Development Center. That completes my report.
Thank you. Board members, any questions for Dr. Looney? Okay, see none. Next item is the board chairman's report. Just want to remind board members and everyone in the community our graduation schedule is coming up very soon. It's always heartwarming to see our students graduate and watch all the excitement there, especially from the parents more than the students, I think. But just try to get to as many as you possibly can. The next item is the testing is going on right now, so be quiet when you go around the school zones. Make sure that the students are getting all they need to get great scores on our tests. The next item is on May 15th is the last day for out-of-zone applications. I want to make sure everybody knew that because May 15th is the deadline for that if someone is wanting to go to an out-of-zone school. So you have until then to get your application in. That's all I had for my report. Anyone have any questions for me? All right, the next thing is unfinished business. We have none, so we move on to new business. First item is the 2018-19 school board budget. Dr. Looney, the first item is general purpose school board fund intra-category on mileage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, this is allow us to increase mileage for OTs and PTs across the district. I do recommend your approval.
Okay, anyone like to make a motion for this? Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Wimberly. I'd like to second it. We have a second from Mr. Mitchell. Any discussion? Okay, I see none. We already have Dr. Looney's recommendation. Then if you'd go ahead and record your votes, please.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item is Education Capital Projects Fund, intercategory, Creekside Elementary. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. As you know, we have started the project at Creekside Elementary School. We've had an exorbitant amount of rain, and we needed to add some gravel so that we can continue the work there, and that will be coming out of our rural fund. Do recommend approval.
Anyone like to make a motion for this? We have a motion from Mr. Cash. Anyone like to second that motion? We have a second from Mr. Welch. Any further discussion? I see none. You have Dr. Looney's recommendation. If you'd go ahead and record your votes, please.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item is a general purpose school board budget amendment, Wilco's. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, just in case you don't remember, the Wilco's is a fantastic evening where we celebrate some of our most talented athletes. We are fortunate to have a partner in funding that event, Walker Chevrolet, and so this is a contribution for the Wilco's from Walker Chevrolet in the amount of $23,000. I do recommend that you approve the receipt of that money and the expenditure.
Anyone like to make a motion for this one? We have a motion from Ms. Emerson, a second from Ms. Durham. Any further discussion on this one? I see none. And if you go ahead and record your votes, please.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item is General Purpose School Board Fund Resolution, ESCO payment. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. As you know, we have entered into an ESCO contract with Train for the purpose of saving on utility expenses. That project is going extremely well. We would like to transfer the $538,917 from the electricity line item in order to pay for the debt service. As you know, we are actually making money on that, so it not only pays for the debt, but we're making a little bit of money. This allows us to transfer the money.
Anyone like to make a motion for this one? We have a motion from Ms. Emerson. All right, we have a second from Ms. Cleveland. Any further discussion on this one? Okay, I see none. You have Dr. Looney's recommendation. If you'd record your votes, please.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next one is General Purpose School Board Fund Resolution, background checks. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. The state has changed the law as it relates to the requirement for fingerprinting employees. We have to do that every 5 years now. That is an unanticipated expenditure in the current budget, so this allows us to move money in order to accomplish the intent of the law.
Anyone like to make a motion on this one? We have a motion from Mr. Welch. Anyone like to second that? We have a second from Mr. Hall. Any further discussions, comments, or questions? Mr. Galbraith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Dr. Lee, after the budget meeting, I guess yesterday, can you comment on the fact that this is a requirement, and how much money are we getting from the BEP to pay for this?
We don't get any money from the BEP for this. It is an unfunded mandate. We have actually been doing that with volunteers as well as a board expense. This is just a requirement now that we have to do a rotation, 20% of our teachers a year, in order to comply with the every 5 years. So the state put this into law, and we get to fund it.
I know it's only $32,000, but it's just an example. So I guess we'll try to point these out to people as they go along. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I see none. Then if you go. I'm sorry, hold on just a second. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Is it all of our staff, all 7,000 employees are in that 5-year rotation, or just the teachers?
Yes, sir. We do all employees, anybody that might possibly interact with students.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other questions then. If you'd go ahead and record your votes, please.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you, Board. Our next item is facility use fee schedule for 2019-2020. This is an annual agenda item. Dr. Looney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. As you know, we make our facilities available to local nonprofits for use. We are not allowed to make a profit off those, so we get reimbursed for maintenance and utilities expense and cleaning expenses, and so this fee schedule represents that. I do recommend your approval.
Okay, board members, anyone like to make a motion for this fee schedule? We have Mr. Welch with a motion. Anyone like to second it? And Ms. Durham seconds the motion. Any further discussion, comments, or questions? Okay, I see none. You have Dr. Looney's recommendation. If you go ahead and record your votes, please.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item is out-of-zone schools 2019-2020. Dr. Looney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. We discussed this extensively in the last work session that we had. I would like to note that we've added Jordan at the request of, or as a result of the conversation that we had at the work session. As you know, the Jordan open zoning would allow some families to move from Sunset to Jordan early, which is really part of phase 2 of option 1 that you've approved. It does not create an overcrowding situation at Jordan. It does relieve Sunset somewhat, albeit that it wasn't anticipated to become overcrowded until the last year. So, long story short, we can accommodate this request if this is the board's desire. The balance of the recommendations for additional open zoning schools are items that we discussed in the work session and are a result of the zoning plan that you've approved. Be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Anyone like to make a motion on this one? We need to have a motion on the floor first. We have a motion for Mr. Wimberly, second for Mr. Galbraith. Okay, Mr. Welch.
So, Dr. Looney, at the work session, the Jordan Elementary open zone to Sunset Elementary was listed at 50 total, and now we've got it at 100 total. Can you speak to that, and what is the staff's recommendation on this?
Yes, sir. We added, at the request of Mr. Galbraith from the work session, we added the additional 50 because the numbers allow us to do it. It's completely whether it's up to the board. I will say it's not, we have not traditionally open zone for 100 students. We quite frankly put it on the agenda because we thought that was the intent of the board. We typically wouldn't recommend doing that, and that's consistent with what our recommendation is, which is it's your decision to make. We'll make it work if that's what your desire is. But otherwise, we wouldn't recommend it. I will say that if you do decide to do it, from our perspective, the capacity is there to allow for it.
What does staff recommend then?
We defer to the board.
I'm kind of looking for guidance on this one. Not to put you on the spot, but...
Well, I will say it's inconsistent with what we have typically done, but if you think about the law that was passed in 2013, I believe it was, is that right, Mr. Golden?
Yes, sir.
The law indicates that if there is available space, then we should try to provide our families with options. And so I will say that this request is consistent with Tennessee law, albeit it is a deviation from what the staff would typically recommend, which is up to 50 students. And I guess I'm kind of dancing around your question.
A little bit.
Our recommendation is 50, but we can accommodate the 100 if that's the board's desire.
What is the impact of long-term versus 50 for 100?
Given that
Short-term and long-term.
yes, sir, there is no short-term impact.
Okay.
Long-term, we believe Jordan has the capacity for the next 5 years to accommodate those students. In addition, if you'll remember, this is part of phase 2 of option 1 that you've already approved. So if you honor Mr. Galbraith's request, you're essentially allowing for some of those families to go earlier than they otherwise would do through a rezoning in the future.
What is the impact on Sunset Elementary?
The short-term impact on Sunset is, from a capacity standpoint, is negligible. I will say it will have an impact on staffing, because if 100 families leave the school, then that's 4 to 5 teaching positions that we would have to transfer out of Sunset Elementary School to Jordan. But once again, those teachers would ostensibly have jobs. They would just be jobs at a different
Would it be a
school.
one-to-one transfer, most likely?
It would be
not nail
close to
you
a
down.
one-to-one, yes, sir.
Okay. And then, do you have a recommendation on the rising 4th grade students rezoned to Nolensville?
Yes, sir, we do. The staff does not recommend that you move forward with that open zoning request, simply because if you approve it, remember that you are approving not only the rising 4th graders, but their siblings as well. There is a nuance in the board's policy that stipulates that if you open zone, you remain open zoned in that feeder pattern moving forward. So it actually benefits you to be open zoned more than it does to be grandfathered. And so for that reason, and because Mill Creek would be over capacity next year if all of those students took that option and proceeded to stay at Mill Creek. So the staff and I do not recommend open zoning the rising 4th graders and their siblings.
Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Had a couple of questions, I guess, already answered. One of the, I guess, one of your points, Dr. Looney, I would ask kind of a follow-up question to Mr. Welch's question is, if the rising 4th graders, instead of being open zoned, were grandfathered, would staff recommend that?
No, sir, because once again, the school would be over capacity next year. It wouldn't be significantly over capacity, but it would be over capacity. And so, we don't want to recommend a plan for next year that essentially, after all the rezoning pains that we've gone through, puts the school back in an overcrowded position next year.
Okay. And maybe Mr. Welch asked this and I didn't hear it, but does staff recommend any of these 4?
So the first 2, the staff didn't enter the work session with a recommendation, and today our recommendation remains as it was, which is 50 students from Sunset to Jordan, not recommending Mill Creek Elementary. The following 2, Sunset up to 50 from Mill Creek, we do recommend, and then the final one, Sunset Middle up to 50 students from Mill Creek. So the first 2 is a no. The second 2 is a yes. When I say no on the first one, the Jordan one, it's because we originally recommended 50, which is what we typically do. We try to be conservative in allowing open zone students to go because we never know what's moving forward. But I also want to be clear that analyzing the numbers, we believe that we could accommodate the board's desire, if that's your desire, to allow for 100 students to go.
If this resolution is, or this open zoning resolution is voted down completely and none of these 4 happen, what is the impact to our numbers for that? is there negative? Is it negligible? Is it?
Yes, sir. Then in effect, what you approved at the last school board meeting takes effect
Right.
without
That's
exception.
the extent of the open zone.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. And I guess, Mr. Golden, I'd ask you if myself or my colleagues here wanted to divide this resolution into separate votes, would you be in a position to guide us on that process?
Sure, and I'll go ahead and do that since you asked. There's a motion on the floor, and so my recommendation, if that's what you wish to do, is make a motion to amend this in some way that affects whatever intent you have. For example, if you want to say yes to particular ones, say motion to amend it to approve certain ones and disallow others, might be a motion to amend. If this motion passes as is, then we're done for this agenda item. So if any of you all are looking for a change, it really needs to be a motion to amend.
Okay, as opposed to a motion to, I think there is a method to divide
You could do that. You could motion to split it into two votes. You could, and then that would be the motion on the floor at that point.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Galbraith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regards to the Jordan, after talking with them, I mean, they did email the board with 140 or so signatures that said requesting to be zoned. I don't anticipate, given that they weren't, I don't anticipate more than 50 requesting to be open zoned, because largely they wanted to go with their entire subdivision, and so moving to the new school without their subdivision wasn't necessarily their intent. So they were requesting all to go. So it really doesn't bother me honestly, I'd rather just leave it as is, as to give them the option, and then they're more than likely it's going to come in at 20 kids or something like that might want to because of transportation. It makes it easy for them. So, but with regard to the fourth grade students, I mean, this has been a conversation that we've had over and over again. With the very nature of our 3 to 5 year plan is with the precise intention that no child is going to have to be moved and then moved again. I think it's unfortunate that we've passed a zoning plan that when implemented, when partially implemented with just fifth graders, gives us a roughly 20 seat capacity, and it fails if even our the 42 or so fourth graders and siblings is now going to put them still overcrowded. I'm really frustrated by our decision to do that. Obviously, I live by the decision of the board, but I don't think we should be taking it out on these fourth grade students. But my question is, what's historically our history of grandfathered students, if you will? I know this is a special open zoning exception, but these are specifically grandfathered students. Isn't it roughly 50% that end up taking us up on the grandfathered option?
I don't know that I could give you a percentage, Mr. Golden. You might be able to speak to that more
That's
intelligently.
approximately accurate. Of course, it varies slightly depending on a lot of logistics at each community, but
Transportation.
generally speaking, that's pretty close.
So really, I think the numbers show that we're going to be approximately 20 students over capacity if everybody, all the fifth graders, all the fourth graders, and their siblings all stayed. Is that correct based on the numbers that Allison gave us?
I think we have room for 39 based on my recollection, and that if everybody took us up on it would be 55. So
55 over. Oh, so we'd be 16 over.
Yes, sir.
I mean, so more than likely we're not going to be over capacity. And even if we are, I mean, you told us that by design, Woodland or Mill Creek Middle School, by design, when everything's full, is going to be 50 over capacity, and you said you could accommodate that. So is that, would being 20 students over capacity cause them to gain back largely the rooms that they've left? And is there plenty of room that they're not missing out on specials and teachers and closets and all that kind of stuff that we've heard complained about?
I think you're asking if we can accommodate the additional 20 students if they manifest, and the answer is, of course, we'll do what's necessary. The building was originally designed, the elementary side was designed to hold 800, but it's not uncommon for us to serve more students than what the building is designed for. So yes, we could accommodate it. The reason we're not recommending it is for the very reason we just don't make recommendations that plan for a school to be overcrowded. I recognize that some families may choose not to. I would be surprised if in this particular incident the families didn't take the opportunity to go because they've expressed such a strong desire to remain where they are. And as you know, it's in very close proximity to Mill Creek. But there's no way for me to adequately or accurately predict how many of those students would actually remain, other than the feedback that I've gotten thus far. But we could accommodate the additional students if necessary.
Well, if it's any indication, I've got a couple emails today. I don't know if they were directed to all board members or just me. They were personalized emails to me, so I don't know if they did it for everyone. But I've received a couple that actually said that they did not intend to accept the grandfathering and that they were going to go. That this process has been so ugly, and some of the people have some of the bad blood between some people and their family is just such that they're ready to go get a new start. So I just anticipate, I really hope that the board recognizes that this is something that we should honor. I strongly believe that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Wimberly.
A point of order, Mr. Golden. May I either withdraw my motion or amend it to split the votes per item, or let's say by the first two items and then the second two?
You can make a motion to divide, as Mr. Mitchell mentioned, and just FYI, I double-checked this, that is actually not debatable. So if you do want to split it with a motion, that could be voted on, and it would create separate motions depending on how you choose to do that.
So this is not an amendment to my motion, it's a new motion?
It would actually apply to the motion on the floor.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to amend my motion to where we split the votes with Jordan Elementary and Mill Creek Elementary being one vote and Sunset Elementary and Sunset Middle being a second vote.
And so, Mr. Chair, that requires a second, if anybody seconds that.
Does he have to withdraw?
You do not have to withdraw. You do not have to withdraw anything. This can be voted on as is.
Point of order,
yes.
if I may. Just to, Rick, are you asking for Jordan to be separate and Mill Creek to be separate, or them to be voted together?
I asked that they be voted together.
Okay. I'll second.
All right. So that's not debatable. That requires a vote at this point.
Okay, so let me understand now. So he's asked to split, to vote on the first two as one question, and then the last two as another question.
That's correct.
That's correct.
So my advice at that point would be the item on the floor for discussion for next vote would be the first two, and then once that vote is made, then you would vote on the second two if this passes.
Okay, so it's not debatable. Do we need to take a vote then to divide the question?
That's correct.
So,
hold on,
point of order one more time. I'm sorry to make sure that we're all clear on what we're voting on here. Is we're voting to split the ordinance into two votes, basically, or the resolution into two votes.
That's correct. And both motions that stay on the floor at that point with the motion and second that were originally made.
Okay, so we now need to take a vote. And can we do it by machine, or we need to do it by hands or roll call? We can do it by the machine? Okay. Ms. Garrett, do you have a question?
We're voting on Rick's.
just to
Correct.
divide the question into two distinct different ones.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Board members, everybody understand? We're going to vote to just divide the question into the first two being one question, and then the bottom two is another question. And can those be amended as we go through them?
They can each independently be amended if this passes.
All right. So, we ready to vote to divide the question? And Dr. Looney, are you what?
Yes, sir. We're in agreement with your proposal.
Okay. All right. Then let's go ahead and record our votes to divide the questions.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Okay. Board members, everybody cleared when that vote happened, so if you want to speak, you have to re-push your buttons, please. So we're back. Now we're going to vote on the first two, the Jordan and the Mill Creek, the first two. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. Ms. Durham.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I just have a couple of questions. One, okay, so the next phase is, or the next thing to do is to implement option 1, phase 2. And what additional relief to Mill Creek is coming through that phase 2? Can you just remind us?
So phase 2 had two different parts. The primary part that provided additional relief to Mill Creek was the construction and rezoning of students out of Mill Creek for the Triune Area Elementary School. That would ostensibly happen in tandem with the relief of Nolensville Elementary School by rezoning those folks to Sunset.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. So, and just to clarify, I just want to make sure my numbers are right, because Dan and I were kind of talking through it. If we were to approve the Mill Creek numbers, which, can we put that back up there? I guess we can't. Hang on, let me pull it back up on my thing. If we approve the Mill Creek recommendation to, or request to open zone the 4th grade students, and siblings would be grandfathered as part of that, I know, that would essentially give 55 students the opportunity to stay.
That's correct.
And that's on top of the 761 students who are currently, because of, no.
That's correct.
Jason's shaking.
There's next year's enrollment projection is 761.
So it puts us at 16 over capacity.
The capacity of 761, that leaves us 39 students capacity.
Right.
So,
and then if you add, Jason, what were you going to add?
So the 761 is if all rising 5th grade students plus their
Right.
siblings choose to go there.
Right.
And just a detail question, those rising 5th grade students, do any of them have siblings in the 4th grade who would be part of what's already factored into that? So we're like double counting?
Mrs. Nunley has ensured that that doesn't happen. She has made sure that those were mutually exclusive students.
There. Okay, I just wanted to check that.
But you made a good point, and that is, it could be, and Mr. Galbraith said this, it could be that some of the rising 5th grade students and their siblings choose not to grandfather.
Yeah.
It's not typically what happens, but it's possible.
Yeah, I just, to Jay's point on the email, I do feel like, they do have the option to open zone, particularly those Sunset kids. Maybe a lot of them would want to move from Mill Creek. From Mill Creek to Sunset. So that would provide additional relief. But then, I'm just looking at an email I received from somebody, I think today. Yeah, today. And it was just, she said she appreciates everybody who fought so hard. She basically is withdrawing her request for her son to stay at the Mill Creek Elementary School, not because she's admitting defeat, but because she feels like she's no longer welcome in the school, and she's going to talk to the principal, and because there's been a lot of issues there. So I feel like, and that's not the only email that I've gotten like that too, and so I feel like several people will end up not choosing to stay. So that 16 is kind of your guaranteed maximum impact right now, and I feel like I can support this just because I don't know that we're actually going to get there. That would be worst case scenario, and we're talking 16 kids, and if it really makes it's almost a nice reprieve for those who feel it's in their child's best interest to stay at Mill Creek from the community who is just rezoned, and again, because we don't have any guarantee that all those kids would necessarily choose to stay either with everything that's gone on. I hate for the community what's happened, and I don't know, I feel supportive of it just for the sake of letting them if they want to, and knowing that some of them are not going to anyway. They just want to move on. So.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Emerson?
Thank you. I just want to tag a little bit on what Ms. Durham said. There's a lot of ifs in this, and I definitely feel like there might be parents that, because of what you alluded to, and I know it's a fact, that they wouldn't want to stay. On the other hand, since it was a shock and it's been pretty devastating to a lot of the families that live in Mill Creek to be rezoned someplace else, I think it's very appropriate, and I think it's very necessary that we offer this to the Mill Creek parents and students, the rising fourth graders, and they can make the decision. I don't want to be, and I would think that the board would like to back away also from, again, dictating what's going to happen to them. This gives them a little bit of wiggle room to make their own choices about whether or not they want to stay or they go. And I think it's kind of up in the air. I think for the reasons that you said, it's become very contentious. But on the other hand, it's their choice. And I think it's important that we allow them to make it and we don't impose ours on them.
Okay, thank you. Board members, remember last time when I said I tried to push the button, doesn't record. Jason was my witness that I did push the button after Ms. Garrett goes. So I speak after Ms. Garrett on this particular one. So I just want to make everybody know it doesn't show up on the board.
Thank you.
Yeah. Whatever. Hey, it's my birthday. Come on.
I had a question. We're talking about some numbers, but we got a slide from Allison either on Friday or earlier this week that, for transparency's sake, I think it would be great to be showing right now. Could we show that slide of the true numbers, which shows, you know?
We will try to get it up while you're talking.
Okay. So that was my first question. My second question is,
Tim.
Have there been other instances in the county where a group of elementary students has been rezoned this many times in this many number of years?
Yes, ma'am.
And where are those? Can you?
Honestly, it's happened multiple times, and
okay. And what? Maybe, I don't know, Dr. Looney, maybe Denise can speak more to this, but what is the process generally if a group gets rezoned, at an elementary level? Like, what's the process to welcome those students back into the school? How are special situations considered?
Sure. Well, so once the rezoning is approved by a board, then we begin a welcoming process for new students to the new schools. And so the principals work through the assistant superintendent of elementary schools in this case, where they develop a family welcoming process that includes visiting the new school, the employees of the school that the students will be going, coming to their current school. They usually host a family night or a family day. Mm-hmm. Some of our schools have summer programming where they allow the students to come in the summer. So every school handles it a little bit differently, but I will say that there is a process that the welcoming school uses to make sure that the new students feel welcome, wanted, and worthwhile. I want to add that in this particular case, that was their original school prior to Mill Creek opening, so they're honestly returning to a school that they're already familiar with.
I feel like one of the parents made a very good point. In terms of our 3 zoning parameters, to impact as few families as possible, but these families have been impacted several times, so I just wanted to hear the answer to that. And it does look like at one point we were showing that slide that I was.
Staff is still working on it.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
Okay, that's all.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, Ms. Garrett, you were actually talking about the slide that showed if rising fourth graders and their siblings were approved.
Yes, that's the one. It has a color coding on it. or colored fields on it.
The same format as the PowerPoint.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We'll get that up there for you as soon as
Thank
we
you.
can. Okay, it's on the projectors and on your screen, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Oh, I'm done.
Okay. Did you want to say anything to this, Nancy?
No, I just felt like since we're talking about numbers, it would be very helpful to have this slide up.
Okay. All right, thank you. What I wanted to say was, anytime there's grandfathering or open zoning going on, there's assumptions made. The history of the board has been to take the highest assumption and put that in, meaning the full potential. Yet our track record and experience shows us it never happens that way, but to be safe, the staff always does it like that. The other thing is, as they phase out, anyone who's grandfathered in either 4th or 5th grade, they phase out as they go, which leaves those empty spots for what I call backfill, meaning other kids coming into the district. So after the first year, 5th graders, even at the fullest potential, 43 are gone. The next year, 55 are gone out of it because they've grandfathered out of it. The only ones left would be potential siblings that are there. So the impact is never as great as it shows because the staff has to try to account for everybody. Yet our experience shows 50% is high, and the experience that I've worked with in other places, it's basically the same way. It's 50% or 25%. It changes as the grades go. So I would ask everyone that you've heard different things. I lived through the era of what we used to call the Bermuda Triangle, where one area got constantly rezoned, and the board has taken a position in the past to try not to do that. I do not want this part to be considered a new Bermuda Triangle. So I'd really appreciate support to allow the rising 4th and 5th graders to be able to stay at the school for that reason. Yes, it's going to be tight. Yes, we know that. But as I said, they will phase out in year 1 and then year 2 as they move on, and only be left is their siblings, which at max is 12 and 15 for each one. So it's not that many. So I'd ask board members for consideration of that when they're thinking about their vote on the one for Mill Creek. Okay, Mr. Welch, you're up next.
Thank you. Dr. Looney, you said that there were past rezones that have been similar to this where they've been moved multiple times that way. In those scenarios, kind of apples to apples comparison, did we grandfather the 4th graders in that case?
In the decade that I've been here, we've made 2 grandfathering exceptions. One of them was the last rezoning that we did, and it was for rising 7th graders at Woodland. And then there was an incident or a rezoning where we did a special provision for some Scales Elementary School students going to Grassland. In the 10 years that I've been here, those are the only 2 times that we've made an exception.
And what was the rationale for those exceptions at the time? Do you recall?
Honestly, no, sir. It was just a desire of the board, and we could accommodate the numbers, and so I don't recall the specifics of it.
The 16 over number at Mill Creek that we're talking about now as a number, that's 16 over in the coming year, correct?
Yes, sir, for next year, assuming that all the 4th graders and 5th graders remain along with their siblings.
Right, and then is that school projected to grow or decrease in size?
It will continue to grow in size. I agree with what Mr. Anderson is saying, is that those students would matriculate through the elementary school and go to the middle school side, but they will be replaced by more than 55 students the following year, just based on growth numbers.
So at no point after the end of this long process will Mill Creek ever be under capacity because of our rezone. It will start at overcapacity next year, and then we'll continue to grow in how much overcapacity it is.
It will remain at or over capacity until the Triune Elementary School opens. And then, if I remember the numbers correctly, it would be decreased by 125. approximately.
Okay. What's the enrollment numbers at Sunset?
Mrs. Nunley, can you answer that question for us?
You know,
Dr. Lena, I can tell you
Okay,
our
you can, okay.
projection. I can
Okay.
tell you our
Thank you.
projection for this coming year. Sunset Elementary is projected at 721 this coming year,
721.
and with an 805 capacity.
Okay. And we're talking about moving 100 of those kids out? Or about 14% of that number?
If I could just interject, I think Mr. Galbraith had indicated that he was fine with the 50 student number instead of the 100. And honestly, we had added it at your request, Mr. Galbraith, so that might be an adjustment we want to make just here tonight.
I'd like to make that amendment then to roll it back from 100 to 50.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're making a motion to amend the Jordan Elementary one to 50 instead of 100?
Yes.
And it was second by Mr. Galbraith, correct?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion on just the amendment going from 100 to 50 students? Okay, see on Dr. Looney?
I do make that recommendation.
All right, then we'll vote on just the amendment. If you go ahead and record your votes. Is it ready? Okay. Go ahead and record your votes then, please.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
All right, thank you. Then we're back to the now amended motion for just the first two. Yeah, let me turn you back on. Go ahead.
Okay. So I think where I'm struggling here, and I'm going to put this out to give whomever on either side the option to sway me, is want to be compassionate in this scenario. With all respect to my colleague Candy, who I know has a very gentle heart, I do disagree with you on, we're here to make decisions. We can't just allow people to make their own, or that's the whole point of having zones that way. We would, if we just said, yep, it's a free-for-all, we would certainly have overcapacity at a lot of schools, and people would certainly pick the ones that were closest. And a lot of rezones have happened where people aren't happy with being rezoned, but then they get into the school and they're very happy. In a lot of cases, actually grateful that they've gotten there. So I disagree with you on that portion of it, but I do agree with you on wanting to be compassionate and wanting to try and help families where we can. So I do appreciate you bringing that point up. The challenge that I have, and this is what I'm struggling with to try and justify this vote to myself, it's an equity issue, in that we've gone through lots and lots of these rezones and rezoned people in, Franklin and Brentwood and Thompson Station and Nolensville and every other corner of our community. And, I don't recall a rezoned neighborhood in ever, through any of these, ever a single neighborhood saying, we're glad we're getting rezoned. We're happy about this. We want to move. I honestly can't remember a single incident of that. And so when the argument is made that, we act in a certain way because this is what the rezoned community, they want to stick where they are. We're making these decisions for the betterment of the students as a whole. We're not rezoning Mill Creek because it brings joy to us or anyone else. We're doing it because it's in the best interest of those students who are having services that are being denied to them right now for lack of space and other usage, as we know. So I struggle with this because this has been a very painful rezoning process. I would say per capita, this has been the most painful rezoning process that I have ever seen. And I think we as a board need to, at our strategic retreat or whatever it is, need to sort of have some hard looks about ourselves, our code of ethics, following that, how we're doing rezoning, everything else, because this is I would be surprised if any one of the 12 of us at the end of all this process is willing to raise our hand and go, yep, I'm proud of the process that we had and how we've done this. I know I've not enjoyed this, and I think we've, Angela, I think you used the word contentious for Nolensville, which is a good word for it. It has created a very contentious process in that community, and I blame ourselves for this, myself included as one entity, and not wanting to point fingers at any one individual or individuals through this. Again, all that, though, really would like to try and agree to this, the fourth grade open zone, but I'm going back to all of these other neighborhoods and communities that we've had in the past where we haven't given that option. And again, not because it's being hard-hearted, not wanting to cause contention or anything else, but because we were trying to act in the best interest of the entire community. And I'm also concerned about setting a precedent with this. A precedent for we've shown beneficial treatment for this one that we haven't shown for zonings in the past, or setting the precedent going forward that now we have to do this continuously and that we haven't followed our own policy. So I've kind of talked around that in circles a little bit, but I would be kind of curious to hear others' thoughts and what they have to say, because I know this is an issue that I'm struggling with for a while, and even today, and even right now, still sort of wavering back and forth where I am on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Galbraith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really, like this is not something that we're going above and beyond and doing, like treating these people and just giving them everything they want. Like we're kicking them away from the school that they're zoned, that they're in proximity to, and this is the equivalent of just kicking them while they're down, right? Like and it's singling out these 44 or less than that, maybe 30 something plus a few siblings, fourth graders who have already been at Nolensville, and we've put them through this rezoning process, and now they've lost, and now we're saying we're gonna kick you while we're down. But the worst part to me is that this isn't even the problem you're trying to solve, Eric. Is that you're right? It doesn't feel like we're putting them over, and then they're going to continually be over a little bit more and more every year. And by design, in phase 2, in the Triune School, they're going to be relieved. But if it pains us to see that we might have 16 extra students over capacity next year, well, after Triune gets built and we pull 125 students, and that's the end of phase 2. They're going to be we're projected for them to be 19 students over, and that's for real. Like that's not going to go away with a year of people moving out for transitioning to the 4th and 5th grade. And so it's just the result of us having so little margin for error. But yes, we're taking it out on these 44 kids, and I don't think that's a burden that they deserve to have to bear.
Thank you. Mr. Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I want to kind of give caution to is some of the hyperbole that's invoked in some of this discussion. We're talking about moving from school to school. There's transitions from year to year that kids are really resilient and they adapt well. rezoning is not easy. And the only consensus that we really had in this process is that nobody wanted to be rezoned, with very few exceptions. And I understand that if we make a lot of exceptions to allow more grandfathering and open zoning, we're really not accomplishing the goal of open zoning. So I do keep that in mind. And I am also, though, persuaded by the particular experience of this situation. And you could say every zoning situation is unique. And in this case, you have students who are at one school, open another school, and now are going to be in their third transition in elementary school. I think that's worth a consideration. I do appreciate staff recommendations on this. If staff didn't toe the line on policies like this, we would never have a board member say, hey, let's rezone Nolensville next year. That'll be fun. So it's important to have that standard held by staff. But I also feel like when there's accommodation that can be made without significant hardship, I think we should accommodate that. I mean, when we were talking about rezoning Page Middle students, there were a lot of people that wanted to stay at Page Middle. It was just a no-go, way over capacity. The rezoning addressed that well, but in this case, it's a bit different. I think that in the explanation of the numbers, we're really close, certainly, to capacity, but it's not. It doesn't sound particularly burdensome, and I don't feel that we're creating an inequitable situation for the students that are there. I feel like I'm more on the side of this creates an accommodation for some families that would really appreciate it, and that if we can do so, I feel like we should.
Thank you. Ms. Emerson?
Thank you so much, Casey, for what you said. I agree. And Eric, I know that you are compassionate and that you have a heart. I do not think that what we're asking for is a precedent. In fact, I think every time we have to do this, there's new things. We don't, if it were a slam dunk, then we wouldn't even be here talking about it because it would already have been decided, because it's the same thing. It's a precedent. It's something that we just do. And I think the thing that just breaks my heart and makes me angry is that some of the kids at Mill Creek, this will be their second rezone. They started in one school, they were rezoned to Mill Creek, and now they've been rezoned back to Nolensville, and they've established themselves there, and they're happy. And as I think Angela said, there's probably some families that just are ready to go ahead and cut bait and go and make that adjustment next year. But there are some, if they're wanting to and willing to go, I believe they'll be very well received, and I think it will mean a lot to those rising fourth graders to stay with their friends that they formed bonds with, because when they leave, they'll be leaving together rather than being broken up and split apart again. And children are very malleable, but you know what? This is not a great care. I mean, we can do something here that's good. We can accommodate the parents that feel that this is in their best interest in the children that they have at home. And I don't believe that we're going to have a lot of people take us up on this for some of the reasons that Angela said. I think there's some people that just want to leave. So I understand that I think each situation that is presented to us may look like and feel like we're just doing the same thing again and again, and that's a good thing. When we stop looking at individuals and families as the same thing, then we're way off base, because everything is different and unique, and where we can help and do something good, let's do it. So I hope that you'll reconsider and vote yes to allow these families that choose to stay at Mill Creek to be able to stay.
Thank you. Mr. Welch?
Thank you, and I appreciate those words. I don't want to get into a game of semantics here, but I do feel that words set up here are powerful, and so I just have to kind of eject two phrases. One where we say we're kicking them while they're down, and taking it out on 44 kids. We're rezoning kids from one wonderful elementary school to another wonderful elementary school. And it's not ideal, but I don't think that phrase is appropriate to say that we're kicking them while they're down or taking it out on them. We're all trying to act in what we feel is the best interests of the district as a whole. So I do feel that I had to say something about that since we're here live being broadcast in front of the media and everything else that way. That's just a little bit too negative and nasty, I think, of a connotation to how we're treating children, and I don't think that's fair.
Thank you. Mr. Cash?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had a lot of discussion again tonight. I'd like to represent my district and part of several other districts in the rezoning last year. It seems like people have convinced a lot of people that their communities are special. They've got too much traffic. They've got walking paths. They've got this. Our community is special. We care about each other. You know, every community down in the south area is special also. They had special needs. The first thing is uprising fourth graders in our districts were not allowed to go for good reason. Had they went, there'd be 4 portables at Allendale. Oakview probably wouldn't have been able to function this year. Folks, these numbers aren't just drawn up by chance by this staff and put out there. As far as insensitive, I'm not being insensitive. I had a lot of people that begged and pleaded and wanted this same thing, and it was turned down flat for this reason. Those people have feelings too. We have 12 people on this board to make decisions. And I listened and I looked and I went back and forth on these options. And this staff goes back and forth on these options with a lot of compassion. But that's not seen. I just have to say, you know, we went into this, January? To try to reduce the overcrowding in Mill Creek Middle School or elementary school. And we have had so much dialogue on this, and we end up going back over capacity. Why did we go through all this? I'm sorry, folks have to move. I'm sorry for kids that have to move. My kids had to move last year. My grandkids had to move last year. But I just don't, the compassion part of it and accusations like we're throwing kids under the bus, that's not right. But fourth graders rising fourth graders with siblings will cause trouble eventually, right up the line. I don't know how we're going to start going down in numbers. Maybe I'm missing something, but that's the way I feel. But I feel for every child, every parent, but we as a board have to make a decision. And we need to start making decisions rather than continual dialogue and getting beat down because of this. We have to line these schools up so that they have capacities reasonable. And if those capacities aren't reasonable, 200 under capacity at one school, 300 at another, how are we ever going to get a new elementary built? County Commission's not going to approve a new elementary school with capacity in the schools. And that's what we're trying to do, is fill up, add to a school. That was the whole purpose of this. But anyhow, I'll yield the floor now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Wimberly?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call a question.
Okay. Mr. Golden, where do we stand on calling the question?
If there's no objection, the Robert's rules allow informally for you to just vote. If somebody objects, then you actually have to have a vote on the call for question.
Is there any objection to calling the question? Okay, I see none. Then we do not have to have a formal vote.
That's correct.
We're good, so we can just do our regular vote now. Okay, Mr. Golden said now we can just do our regular vote. So we'd be voting on the first part of the divided question as amended, changing Jordan Elementary part for 50 students instead of 100, and then the Mill Creek staying as it is with rising fourth graders being open zone. That's the only piece. That's the only piece. And Dr. Looney, do you want to speak to this?
You've made it complicated because the Jordan Elementary School would have been consistent with what we have done, but given that you're considering open zoning the rising fourth graders, our recommendation has to be we do not recommend it.
Okay, if you go ahead and record your votes then, please.
Your vote is 7 yes, 5 no.
Okay, thank you. So that first part passes then as amended. We're moving on to the second part of the divided question for Sunset Elementary for up to 50 students from Mill Creek or Nolensville, and Sunset Middle up to 50 students from Mill Creek. The motions?
Motion's on the floor.
Motions are already on the floor. Is there any further discussion about this question? Okay, I see none. Dr. Looney, your recommendation?
We do recommend approval.
All right, board members, if you go ahead and record your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Okay. All right, that one passes.
Got one more.
I think yeah.
Okay, Mr. Golden has asked me to read this. Grandfathering and siblings and open zone aren't automatic. Need to submit a request. Go to the enrollment page on the website.
And Mr. Chair, I just wanted to emphasize to anyone watching that just because the board voted doesn't mean that your particular child automatically stays. You do need to still submit that request form on our website. And Mr. Chair, I also wanted to mention Allison's staff will put the open zoning up in the morning based upon your vote, and May 15th is our deadline.
All right, thank you. Thank you, board. The next item is the zoning for Brixworth subdivision. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. As a reminder, this area is under construction, so we're proactively zoning this area so that the entire community goes to the same school. I do recommend approval.
Anyone like to make a motion on this? So moved. We have a motion from Mr. Mitchell and like to second it. Okay, Ms. Emerson seconds it. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Mr. Mitchell. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in support of this rezoning. This is literally in my backyard. So, and I think it's fine to send these children to Heritage. That's technically probably the closest school for that neighborhood. Anyway, that said, I'd like to make a general statement real quick about our rezoning hour here this evening. I wish, and I think everybody here agrees that I wish we could, in rezoning, find ways to please everyone without creating overcrowding or extra spending in the process. I'm proud to serve on a board with 11 other people who are sincere and honest in their opinions, and who literally spend hours and hours discussing and fretting over these decisions, so we can figure out a way to satisfy our constituents and their children. And I want to remind everybody that we're truly blessed to live in an area with such great schools and teachers that nobody wants to leave the school that they're in. And as we're all back and forth and kind of, making one decision or the other, and I want to, the staff that has to work through our decisions and has lots of extra work and effort to put into to implement them, that they recognize how much this board appreciates the work that they do and what they bring to this district. And that's, these are not easy decisions, and as I'm fond of saying, we can't please everybody, but we try, and it's with the work of the staff and the teachers that it's their work and you folks that make this the place that 1,000 new students a year are moving into. And everybody lobbies us to keep from leaving the schools that they're in. So I just want to make that, want to kind of end with a positive statement here.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion about this zoning of the Brixworth Reserves subdivision area? Okay, I see none. We have Dr. Looney's recommendation. If you go ahead and record your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
All right. Board, thank you very much for the evening and the time we spent on all of these issues. We appreciate it, and this meeting is adjourned.